Joel, in reading your very interesting book, I was very surprised that in the character of the MC, when you first were presented with the script, there was not a line of dialogue. You had a facade to cover up with artful makeup, but no notion of what was behind the facade, what was the character. And the question is, how did you create the character, since you had so little to deal with when offered the part?
Well, the character was described by Hal Prince, the director. He had met during the war in Stuttgart. He went to some seedy nightclub. I don't know why he would do such a thing. But, you know, when you're in Europe. And he saw an MC who was a midget. And this midget was covered with makeup and lipstick and eyelashes. And he never forgot that man. And that's kind of the beginnings of this character. Mm-hmm. And there was not a line of dialogue when I read the script. There were just these 5 songs. And
but in your book, you do mention when you were a young and very unhappy comedian, you happened, while in St. Louis, you must have been in your 20s, you happened one night to see a comedian who you thought was awful, rather sadistic and crass and ugly by nature, and yet getting the audience to applaud.
They loved him.
They loved him, and there was a sense.
And I thought to myself, he's using every crappy trick in the book, and they love him. What is that? But I never forgot him.
You never forgot.
You know,
and so,
many years later, we were having a rehearsal of Cabaret. Oh, but I'm going a little too fast. Let's go back to when I got this call from Hal Prince.
Well, okay, but don't forget, we want to hear this opening experience.
Yes.
Okay. Hal Prince knew about you because of another show you did.
Yes.
Tell us about that newly show.
I was in Stop the World, I Want to Get Off in 1965, touring all over the United States, having the biggest success I'd ever had.
And the part, what was the part? You were a clown, weren't you?
Mr. Little Chap. Mm-hmm. And why they thought of me, I'll never know. Anyway, it was a great part. And I started to have some acceptance in the New York theater world. And I had replaced Tommy Steele, Anthony Newley, and a few other, the kid in Come Blow Your Horn.
Right.
So I thought, this is my life. I'm going to be a replacement. And it was pretty depressing. And so I was ready to quit the business. And one morning, I was sleeping late. The telephone rang. Hello, Jolie? Yeah. Hi. Oh, it's Hal. What's the matter? Well, I don't know. Same old, no work. He says, well, cheer up. I'm doing a new show. It's a musical version of I Am a Camera, which is from the Berlin Stories by Isherwood. And we think there's a good part in it for you. Okay. That was good news. And we're going to be playing the score for the cast next week, John Cantor and Fred Ebb. And please come at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I came, and everybody was so excited, with the beginning of a new show. And John and Fred came to the piano. Hal described the show a little bit. And then John said, crash. And he played. And Fred sang, Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. Fremde, étranger, stranger, glücklich zu sehen, just feel. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, oh my God, that's going to be my song. And it was. And we started rehearsal.
How many songs did you have in this?
Well, there were 4 songs, really, for the MC. And,
It's been,
but no character, no lines. That was the difficult part for me, was to find who this character was. Makeup doesn't do anything. So I had to go back to where I began when I was 9 years old. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with the theater. And I learned what it is to be an actor, how to find the attitudes that tell an audience what kind of person this is.
but before you tell an audience, you have to convince the director that it is acceptable what you're doing. And in the case with Hal Prince, going back to the Cabaret rehearsal period, when you had, you probably learned with no trouble the 4 songs.
He thought I was going to be, okay.
Fine. Yeah, well, he saw
Nobody was worried.
But you were.
Particularly because the music was there. The rest of the show was very strong.
And
but I knew.
But you mastered the singing part pretty easily, didn't you?
Yeah, I could sing.
It's been, just to divert, it's been 50 years. Do you think you could recall a few lines from any of the music you sang?
What was that, chopped liver?
Chopped liver. No, I mean, when you actually, that was the opening, but when you did sing.
Well, what happened is that day of the run-through with the cast and the dancers and everybody coming together, and I'm still haven't found the depth of this horrible person. And all of a sudden, I was thinking, just for a second before we began, of that creep in St. Louis who did everything horrible. He was gross. He was disgusting. He was everything I hated. And I thought to myself, try it. And the stage manager said, and everybody will come, and everybody went to their places, and the orchestra started, and I sang it for the first time like that creep, exactly like that creep. And all the girls, I was manhandling them in a way that I hadn't before. And I really was outrageous and disgusting.
Did you have a cane then? You were a bit swinging around?
I always had a cane,
like
and
in the movie.
Lifted up everything I could
with
that cane, and poked it everywhere I could.
Boy.
I left nothing out. And the cast responded in kind.
Is that right?
They started to be a little bit different and a little afraid of me and a little excited by me and stuff. And we finished, and the waiters lifted me up at the very end, and I'm sitting up here, and he says, blackout. And they put me down, and I ran to the back of the theater thinking, oh my God, what did I do? They're going to think that's me. I think I've finished my career. How? And I'm standing there thinking all the great people in the theater were sitting out front, and I'm acting like that. Nobody's going to pay to see a creep. A few minutes later, I felt a hand on my shoulder, and it was Hal Prince. And he said, Jolie, that's it.
Wow.
And that's how the blues was born.
sometimes I wonder how people who have to sing and have more than one song to sing, whether they forget lines. Did you ever have any problem with the songs you had to do in Cabaret that you missed a line and
Never.
you're flawless, of course?
Other shows, yes,
Yeah, not this.
but not this perfect score.
What were the reviews like? Were they all ecstatic after the opening
Yeah.
in 1966?
Yep, and we didn't, I mean, it was a very uncommon kind of Broadway musical about Nazis and anti-Semitism. We were all wondering, and opening night in Boston, nobody knew what we had. We did the opening number, Willkommen, and curtain up, blackout, and the screaming and cheering and standing ovation for an opening number.
Wow.
And we didn't know what to do backstage. Do we do it again? Can we go on with the rest of the show? And the stage manager just said, and the rest of the show went on. But in that moment, we knew we had struck a nerve.
Wow. What was your second number in that play?
Oh, it was about a ménage à trois. Yes.
Can you read?
Biddly-dee-dee-dee, two ladies, biddly-dee-dee-dee, two ladies, biddly-dee-dee-dee, und am the only man, ja, biddly-dee-dee-dee, I like it, biddly-dee-dee-dee, they like it, biddly-dee-dee-dee, this two for one, da-da-da-da-da.
Don't stop. Without it going to your head, could you do another one?
Another cabaret song?
I don't tire of these.
Well, there was a song called The Money Song,
Oh, I want to hear that.
which was thrown out for the movie.
But it was.
They rewrote it to Money Makes the World Go Round. But the original song was, my mother needs money, my father needs money, my sister is... But me, I'm sitting pretty, I've got all the money I need.
Did you,
So they wrote a better song
in the movie?
for Liza and myself. And I can't do that without her.
Well, she'll be here later. I have to tell you that. What
I heard you learned the lyrics.
What about Tomorrow Belongs to Me? Did you do that? Or was that someone else?
Yes, there was this beautiful song called Tomorrow Belongs to Me that was very, very elegant and religious and important. It was like a really German, solemn song. And it was sung by young, beautiful boys in the who were waiters. And da 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 dum, the ba ba da 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 dum, ba do 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 do. Tomorrow belongs to me. And then they went off and they said, tomorrow belongs, tomorrow belongs. And then I came down the steps and I said, tomorrow belongs to me.
And it did belong to you after that show.
Then I got to put on ladies' clothes.
Well, but you didn't stay with the show.
And God, was I ugly.
But I read in your book that you didn't stay with the show for more than a year because you had an opportunity to be even more having Tomorrow Belong to You when George Cohan became the subject of a musical. And you were given the lead, meaning more than with Cabaret.
This sounds good. Tell me more.
You would have your name above the marquee, above the title.
At the Palace.
And what year was this? 67?
Yeah. 1967.
And you were about 33 years old. You had a wife and 2 children.
Right. Sitting on top of the world.
Well, you were for a moment, weren't you? And then what happened? Now you had to really become a dancer because George Cohan was a great tap dancer.
I had to learn.
And you had to learn a lot of songs.
No, I had to learn to tap.
You didn't know anything about that before. How did you learn that well in a relatively short period, tap dance? Who taught you, or who were the instructors?
I worked with an expert tap dancer every single day for a couple of hours before rehearsal. And it was very difficult choreography. But I didn't really have a choice. I had to do it. You know what I mean? I had to learn it. However, it was so complicated that every single night of that show, of George M., I would go downstairs before my entrance, under the stage, and practice my solo in my first number. Never did a show without doing that.
What was the first number?
It was called All Aboard for Broadway. And it was the 4 Cohans. Bernadette Peters.
Oh, she was in that.
She was my sister.
Was that her debut
She
performance?
still is. That was her debut, yeah. She went into Dames at Sea after that.
And how long did this run? Was there a movie before this?
Yankee Doodle Dandy?
It
was a classic.
I know that, but was it the movie
And
was the movie before this, the 1966 revival of George M.? Was there a movie before this?
That was Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Was that not?
That was James Cagney.
James Cagney. So
and I was very intimidated.
Well, the reason I bring this question up, Joel, when you follow a movie and you're making your big debut as a star, which you were in this, you had the aura of, or the intimidation of a movie to either to live up to or to ignore. So how did you ignore the, or did you find inspiration from the movie, or did you loathe the movie? That's all I'm trying to get, what your head was at the time.
Terrified.
And how did you do?
I kept going. I just kept doing it because the theater was full. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'll do it.
People paid.
Yeah. And so it was nothing but a glowing experience?
It was one of the hardest. I never left the stage. And I was doing stuff that I didn't know how to do, really. But I could act it. That was that Cleveland Playhouse training.
Yes, that was when you were 8 or 9 years old you started off, didn't you?
I think that's the thing that changed my life and has...
inspired your life, because you started, was your father a help, or were you sort of solitary at that time of your life where, even though Joel, your father, Mr. Katz...
My father was Mickey Katz.
Mickey Katz.
Yes.
Was a clarinetist who started had his own Broadway, had his own show for a while. But were you a part, you were on your own when you first discovered the Cleveland Playhouse, were you not?
Yes, and I had a success, and I found a world of generosity and civility, and people treated you very different from what I was used to in the rest of my life. And I became a person who looked for that for the rest of my life.
Did you get approval from your father or from your mother? Or?
They didn't know where it came from. They didn't know how to deal with me because my dad was this great clarinet player. My mother, had these eyes to be a movie star. That's why she named me Joel McCrae.
And you were Joel McCrae.
Joel for Joel McCrae.
When do you become Joel Gray? Who was that?
That was later.
Much later.
Anyway, my father had this show because he started to make records. He actually, it's a pretty good story, I'll tell you. Wait a minute. He was in a recording session with Spike Jones, and it was an intermission. They'd taken a break, and my father always wrote Yiddish parodies of hit songs. He just liked to do it. And so there was this other musician standing there who hadn't gone out for coffee or for whatever. And my father starts singing this song. Oi, gib mir a heim, mit der Weibel is schein, wo die Schiep und die Ziegelach laufen. Oi, gib mir a Haus, mit gesunde Cowboys, and a couple hundred cattle zu verkaufen. You ready to sing? Heim, heim off in the range. Come on in and bring plenty of change. From Erev zu Boyke, spielt min Pinochle and Poike. Dorten in my high school, often range. Now, unbeknownst to my father, the mic to the control room was open. And these three highly Gentile men who ran RCA Victor were laughing their asses off. They didn't know what it was, but they thought it was funny. And the next thing he knew, they signed him to a contract, and Haim Off and Range sold 20,000 records. And he was off, he ended up having 10 albums.
Wow.
David Crockett. Born in the wilds of Delancey Street, home of gefilte fish and kosher meat. Handy with a knife, oh, here's a chtzi. He flicked him a chicken when he was only 3. David! They're good, right?
What a success. Wow. How did his success affect you, if at all?
Oh, I was so happy.
Were you?
I was so happy for him. And the show, he started this variety show for people in Los Angeles who left New York to move there and didn't have any entertainment that they had in New York.
And you as a family moved to California then?
Yeah, we had moved to California.
What year was that about? You were about 15?
Don't ask me year.
Anyway, you moved to California.
I moved to California.
And
I was 13.
And you, of course, were separated from the Cleveland Playhouse, where you fell
Right.
into security. So
Right.
now what did you do as a transferred person?
Well, I thought to myself, this looks like so much fun. Everybody's having it was such a hit, that show.
Yeah.
Where they had singers and dancers and everybody. And I said, can I be in this show? And he said, well, what would you do? I don't know, because I didn't sing and I didn't dance, and that's the God's truth. And my aunt, my godmother, Aunt Jean, taught me a song by rote, a Yiddish song called Romania, Romania. It was a big hit on the 2nd Avenue circuit. And I didn't know what I was saying. And it was fast. I in Romania, je toch geht 5 minuten. Fijn drinkt is met thanks fall, just like a custard fall. I dig-a-dig-a-dum, dig-a-dig-a-dum, I dig-a-dig-a-dum, dig-a-dig-a-dum. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I was jumping, and I was giving it all, and it worked. And I was a success. And he wrote an opening for me right after that, because I couldn't have just one number. I didn't understand one word of what I was saying. But he wrote me this second song. When I was 8 days old, they named me Yossel. Oh, what a simcha, such a celebration. Oh, my mishpocha drank a toast l'chaim while I was suffering a minor operation.
God.
And later on, I went to kindergarten. I said, teacher, Yossel is my name. She said, the name of Yossel, it sounds like a schlemossel. From Yossel, my name became Joel Gray. So my dad really gave me a real start. And then I toured in his show all over, and Eddie Cantor saw me.
And what city? In Florida, wasn't it?
It was Miami.
In Miami.
Yeah. And he put me on his television show, and that was the end of the Borscht Capades. And it was the beginning of my dreadful, horrible, successful life in nightclubs, which I couldn't get out of.
Well, when Eddie Cantor put you on this television show, was it a one-time performance, or was it a series, or did you go on just once? What happened after
I think
that?
I was on a second time.
And then what did it lead to?
Then they put me in nightclubs. I played the
Went to Chicago, like Chez Paris was one of them?
Chez Paris, but I did my audition at the Copacabana. They put me on at the midnight show. I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, what did you do at Copacabana?
I don't know.
You said you couldn't dance or sing. You must have done something.
Oh, I sang.
You did sing.
But I didn't know how.
And they didn't notice it. Somebody must notice it, but you didn't lose your job, that's for sure.
No, I got another job.
And you went even to Las Vegas, I read.
Yes, yes.
And you played at the...
I played the old Rancho with some of the great acts, like Lily St Cyr.
You were on the stage with her?
Yes.
And you were a young...
I was the comedian. I was the 19-year-old comedian. I was having a relationship with a gorgeous stripper at the Desert Inn by the name of Sherry Britton. And you remember her?
I do remember the name, yeah.
Yeah, she was fabulous. Anyway, Lily St Cyr was on the show at the El Rancho. And I asked the writer, they wanted me to introduce her. And they had this gorgeous tub, and she was going to take a bath and put some clothes on and take them off. And so I said, I wish I was the stopper that's inside Lily's tub. When she gets in to take a bath, glub, 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 glub. Miss Lily St Cyr.
Wow.
She was gorgeous.
And you met Harry Belafonte in Las Vegas.
Yes, we became very good friends.
What was he doing those days?
He was, you know...
He was dancing and singing too.
No, he was singing like great. And he was a great success, but we couldn't find a restaurant that would take us both.
Boy, that's something.
In those days. So we had to go behind, you know,
and how
black market.
And after your success, such as it was, how do you get into film? Who introduced you to film? How did this come about?
Well, I was playing the Mocambo in Los Angeles, and the owner came and said, I was sitting there in my underwear and, you know, it was a little sweaty after the first show, and he says, Lana Turner is out front and she would love to meet you.
Oh boy.
And I thought to myself, well, okay, I think I can do that. Got my clothes on. I came out, she said, oh, I just loved you, you were wonderful. I think, thank you very much. I couldn't remember my words when I was up there, but I thought she was this great, like Rita Hayworth was my other favorite. But here was Lana Turner, and she said, would you like to come up to my house for a drink after? I said, would I? Oh, no, I didn't say that. I said, sure. And I went up there, and the butler started serving us champagne. And I'm looking, and it was like a dream. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been reading about her being the girlfriend of one of the most horrible of, what do they call them?
Mafia guy.
Mafia,
Yeah, she was,
gangsters.
She was well known.
She had a lot of gangsters. And I thought to myself, I'm sitting here. What if one of these guys comes in and sees me sitting here?
Boy.
Excuse me, I have to go home. You know, I have 2 shows tomorrow night. Good night, thank you very much.
Goodbye.
And I thought, she was really something.
Well, tell me, when you heard that 5 years after you did Cabaret with big success, 5 years after you read or heard that the movie was going to be made, and the director was not Hal Prince, it's going to be Bob Fosse. And of course, you wanted to do the part you'd done on Broadway. However, you read that Fosse said he wanted to change greatly.
He didn't want to have anything to do with the Broadway show.
He wanted to cut it and establish his own movie.
Right, which is fair.
And how was it that, well, first of all, he didn't want you. And when you let it be known that you wanted to play, he didn't want you, and he said so in front of the producers. Can you tell me, if you can, as you had it later told to you by one of the major Hollywood producers who funded that, how did it happen that you got the part even though Fosse, the director, didn't want you there?
And the director is king in the movies.
But not in this case. But how did it happen that you overcame the director's wishes to have you not there and you became there?
He said, he came in 6 weeks before they started rehearsals.
Fosse.
Bob Fosse in Munich, and said, "This is it, gentlemen." Everybody was there, all like 10 men. He said, "This is the moment of truth. It's either Joel Grey or me." And Marty Baum, who was the head of the studio, said, "Then it's Joel Grey." I don't think that's ever happened, because the director is king.
But what do you think motivated Fosse in not wanting you? Was it that
he didn't want to have any part of what was already created, and that's sort of interesting and fair.
So when he was overruled, he didn't lose his job as director, but you had to get along with a guy who was reluctant to have you there. I mean, your whole rehearsal must have been, for the movie, I mean, must have been very troublesome, must have been very anxiety-provoking, because he was directing a guy that didn't want him as a director, and you didn't feel comfortable.
Well,
how did it work out?
I also felt that this was my show.
You did.
And that I needed to protect it. And if he was going to be doing little futsy things that he does and that he did, that somehow I would be that person there who would not say something, but I think he felt my presence.
And you had a lot of self-confidence, it seems to me, to do what you did, which is to be confrontational with an established person.
Well, I wasn't confrontational.
No, but you were certainly not going to be you're not going to knuckle under to him.
No way.
All right, so you are confident. Are you not?
Here's what happened. The very first day of rehearsal in Munich, and we're working on two ladies, and he said, "Have you ever done a backflip?" And I said, "No, but I'll certainly try." He says, "Nothing to it. Come here. Johnny, come over here. Will you spot me?" And then he did the thing and fell right on his face. I mean, like,
really?
And stayed there for what seemed like forever.
And you were happy, I bet, but you didn't show it.
I was not.
No.
No, this was serious.
He could have broken his neck.
Yeah, and we didn't know whether or not he was dead, or whether or not the show could even go on.
God.
They came and got him and took him to the hospital, and he was there the next day at rehearsal, black and blue, his entire side of him, but a cigarette hanging out of his mouth that was never gone. And we never heard anything more about the backflip. I would have tried.
So that movie was an enormously successful event, and you were triumphant in getting the best supporting role. You won the Oscar then. And
I didn't think it was going to. I was sure I would.
Was the competition that year was The Godfather, was it?
Right, and I was sure Al Pacino would win because he was great, and it was not a musical movie, which Hollywood sort of thinks is more serious.
Was Pacino up for a supporting role as well as you?
Yes.
Oh, and you won over Pacino then?
I did, but I didn't expect to.
And did the movie version of Cabaret win, or did The Godfather?
Yeah.
I can't remember. It won?
Uh-huh.
Oh boy, that was a big year, wasn't it? After that, though, you were really, I guess your clearly at the very...
I'm not sure. I think we won. I know that Bob Fosse won.
Oh, he won. That'll keep his neck from breaking. That was a good thing for him then, wasn't it? You probably got along better with him after you didn't? Oh, boy.
Never.
That's interesting.
Never happened.
And what happened to you? Now, you're on top of the world. At this point of your life, what are you, 30? What are you?
Oh, I came that night after the Oscars. I came home, and my next door neighbor was Larry Hagman.
Oh, boy.
Who was just the most wonderful buddy.
Long before he made Dallas. He wasn't known.
No, he was.
He
yeah.
He was in Dallas then?
He always called me his little buddy, and he took care of me, right? So I came home that night with the Oscar and my beautiful wife and walked up to my house, and I saw this enormous trophy.
Made out of what?
Made out of, all the stuff the trophies are made out of. And it was inscribed for Joel Grey, the world's best fucking neighbor.
Wow.
And he was worried
That you would get nothing.
I would come home empty-handed.
Uh-huh. Isn't that nice? Good neighbor. One of the most interesting parts of your interesting book deals with around this time of your life when you had this well-deserved recognition and the confidence that went with it. You decided to tell your wife, Jo, about your private life for the first time.
Before we were married.
Before you were married, going back to your youth. And you thought you just felt you wanted to fully disclose yourself.
Mm-hmm. I was
In
that
retrospect, probably not
much in love.
And you were that confident, too.
Right.
That you were going to have your wife acknowledge your honesty and give tribute to it and embrace you and how, darling, I understand, blah, blah, blah. It's not what happened. Tell us what did happen when you told her and how you told her. What did you say?
She said...
You were married 24 years almost at this time.
Right.
Yeah.
She said nothing. She said nothing, and that was really the beginning of the end. And we started to grow further and further apart. And we'd had a wonderful time. I was crazy in love with her, and we had these great kids, and we were the couple that everybody said would always be together. And, things change.
It changed,
And that was the time of the women's movement, too. The Cinderella complex and all that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
And she had given up her career when she got married. And I think she was thinking of maybe going back to it. I don't know. But it was...
Well, for you...
It was the end.
For you, it was the end as well, but maybe another beginning of something different. And that was a time of your life, as you expressed in parts of this book, when you had to think about getting back something of your identity. And you didn't know, would that identity as a gay man suit you? How comfortable
The word gay there was no such thing. No name, no word like that.
Homosexual, what was homosexual?
Faggot.
Oh, not in polite company, but...
Yes.
All right. So anyway, where is Joel Grey going to go in this time of his life? What options did you have? What was your thinking at this time? Post-divorce, must have been 83, 84.
I was by that time so much husband and father that I just didn't have any experience in that other world.
But she moved the children away from you. You used to live on Fifth Avenue and at that time of the breakup. You had an apartment in the 90s on Fifth Avenue. I knew you during all this period. And she takes the kids and goes to where, Los Angeles?
Yes.
Both your daughter and your son go with her.
And at this time, I'm offered a play called The Normal Heart.
Oh boy, that's Larry Kramer's famous.
Larry Kramer's great
It was 82. Play. This was 1982 then.
Yeah. And I went to see it.
That's the year Rock Hudson died too, 82.
He was sick at that time.
Sick time.
And I went to see it, and I thought to myself, this is an amazing thing, because what's in this play, nobody is believing.
Yeah.
And the people that are being affected by it are crying out during the play. And at the intermission, I said to Larry Kramer, whom I had met, if anything ever happens in this play where somebody is replaced, just know that I want to be a part of it. 2 weeks later, Joe Papp calls me and said, Brad Davis is ill with AIDS and he has to leave, and can you learn this part in a week and a half?
Wow.
And be in the show. Well, playing that role changed my life. I spoke like the most proud, amazing, complicated, I spoke like Larry Kramer. And
Yeah, and that was the part that this major role was the narrator, the voice of the author, Larry Kramer.
no, he was the character.
I mean, the character, the guy that died, Brad Davis, was who played
And
Larry.
everybody was so nervous at that time. People were afraid to drink water out of someone's glass and thinking you could get it from kissing.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And what happened is a friend of mine said, if you're going to do this and you don't know the gentleman who's going to play your lover and you're going to have to kiss him, you better find out whether that's safe.
Yeah.
So I called this doctor who was taking care of Rock Hudson at UCLA, and I told him the situation, and he was very
What
quiet.
did you say
I said,
to the doctor? I have to kiss this guy or not? Or
Yes,
should I
yes,
or shouldn't
yeah.
I? Will I be injured? Will I die? Will I get AIDS?
yes, what do you think? What's your advice?
What do you say?
And he said, well, do you have to kiss him? And of course I said, yes, I do. Then there was this quiet, and he said, then I wouldn't do the play. Well, we know I did it
And
because actors, we don't take things like that.
so in parts of this play, you're having a passionate kiss with your fellow actor.
And I see some of my audience from George M. walking out
Really?
during the performance.
But still, in your book, you write, in that audience happens to be your son and your daughter.
Right.
And after that performance, backstage, they come and embrace you
True.
and accept you in this new role as, even the gay wasn't in the language then. You were a gay man, a gay father. And you had the affection of your children for the first time since the end of your marriage, right?
Absolutely.
So this is another triumph, maybe quite different from Cabaret or George M., but a different triumph in a different place in your own heart and mind, right?
There's a
Read something from that. I'd like to hear something.
a page.
We have time, don't we? Sure we do.
Do you have time?
Yeah. What can they say? You're going to do it anyway. Knowing you as we do.
Having played all over the world, Cabaret is now an international touchstone. I remember traveling to Amsterdam in the 70s for the opening of the Dutch production. And with a free morning, I was walking along the canals when I heard a tapping sound on a window. Through the glass, I could see a woman waving for me to come closer. And I just assumed it was one of the city's many prostitutes. No, thank you. I continued walking, but the tapping grew louder until finally the woman threw open her window and yelled, "Joel Grey!" Oh, God. Turning around and walking back toward her in resignation, I geared up for the encounter since she was obviously not to be denied. When I got in front of the canal house, the woman was no longer in the window. Before I knew it, she was coming out the front door, and only then, when she extended a very large hand with green nail polish, did I realize, in fact, she wasn't a woman after all. "I'm Sally Bowles," she said. And I'm smiling to myself, and I thought, of course you are. "How are you liking Amsterdam?" she asked. "Very much, thank you. It's lovely to meet you." Now, what about finding Sally as a transvestite in the middle of the Netherlands? That's simply the miracle of performance and of discovery. I was truly glad to meet her. My confidence in my search continues to grow, as does the authenticity of my existence, now that the old attitudes and intolerance don't hold the same power to sting or stop the search. I am heartened by the irrepressible nature of desire, and that the fear of aloneness is greatly diminished by the inner quest that is now my companion. I know firsthand the power of transformation, that things can and things do change. A doting mother turns into antagonist. A wife becomes a stranger. Children grow into adults. A husband of a woman finds he loves men, and the horror of a crass vaudevillian becomes the beautiful part of a lifetime.
We have a couple of questions.
Feel free.
Well, we will read the questions. Did Alan Cumming ever ask you for any words of wisdom? Now, explain who Alan Cumming is to those.
Alan Cumming, I went to see him, and he was a wonderful, wonderful actor, and we were friends. And that production was totally different from ours.
What year I forget what year.
That was a couple of years ago, and we were from
It was on Broadway.
1966.
Yeah, the cat.
And what Sam Mendes and Rob Marshall and Alan Cumming did was fantastic, but truly different.
Another question. What was it like to work with Liza Minnelli?
You're not asking me that question.
That's what they ask here.
Let me see that. Oh, for Christ.
All right.
Fabulous. She is so funny and fun, and we had the best time.
Long question. Being a Broadway legend, who would you like to say is the person to watch these days? I don't know.
Well, Audra McDonald is well on her way, in my opinion. And so is Sutton Foster.
In a recent article, you're quoted as saying, "Being an actor saved my life." What did you mean by that? You probably answered it already, but what did you mean by that?
Well, the ability to work out emotional experiences through a character was very valuable. I think that's one of the reasons that I probably fell so hard for the theater, was that I knew that it was a place to sort out a life. The life of a character, the life of your own life.
Mm-hmm. Another question. What is the piece of advice you give to an aspiring young actor? What would you tell them, an aspiring young actor?
Let me see that. Liza Minnelli. No. Here's what I say always. If you have to do it, if you cannot bear to think of your life without it, that's probably the good thing. If you feel any less passionate than that, don't bother.
Following up, what is the one thing you wish you could tell your younger self? You remember your younger self?
patience.
How has the gay community received you since your coming out?
I haven't spoken to them all.
Well, listen, I just want to congratulate you as one writer to the other. I very much liked your book, and I'm sure the audience will as well. So let's just terminate our joy on this stage and get you scribbling your name over there to this book. And
How about my great pal? Come here, come here, come here, come here, come here, come here.